The ground shook again as another Vorthak bomb hit the surface above. Ambassador Zethka pressed his long fingers against the cold metal wall of the underground bunker and tried not to think about how many of his people had died in the last 3 days. His crystalline skin, normally a calm blue-green, had turned the deep purple of fear and stayed that way since the attack began. The bunker was small and dark. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. Zethka sat alone at the quantum communicator, the only device they had left that could reach other star systems. Outside, he could hear the distant sounds of his world dying. Buildings falling, people screaming. The Vorthak were very good at destroying things. Zethka had been a diplomat for 40 years. He had traveled to many worlds and met many species. He had always believed that talking could solve any problem. But the Vorthak did not want to talk. They wanted only to take what they could use and destroy everything else. The Vorthak had come to the Corallian worlds 6 months ago. At first, they had seemed like any other trading species. They were tall insects with hard shells and sharp claws, but many species looked dangerous and were actually peaceful. The Corallians had welcomed them with gifts and friendship. That had been a mistake. The Vorthak had studied the Corallian defenses while pretending to be traders. They had mapped every world, every city, every military base. When they finally attacked, they knew exactly where to strike. The Corallian fleet had been destroyed in the first hour. Their peaceful ships with their beautiful designs were no match for Vorthak war vessels built only for killing. Now Desha Prime was the last Corallian world still fighting. All the others had fallen. Millions of his people were dead or enslaved. The Vorthak used Corallian prisoners to work in their mines until they died from exhaustion. They did not care that Corallians were living beings with families and dreams. To the Vorthak, other species were just tools to be used. ZS touched the communicator controls with shaking hands. He had been trying to reach the Centauri Federation for 2 days, but something was wrong with the quantum relay. His messages were not getting through. Maybe the Vorthak had damaged it, maybe his equipment was broken. It did not matter now. He had to keep trying. Above him, another explosion shook dust from the ceiling. The Vorthak were getting closer to the government district. Soon they would find the bunker. Soon it would all be over. Zethka had seen what the Vorthak did to captured leaders. They kept them alive just long enough to watch their people suffer. Then they killed them slowly. He did not fear death for himself, but he could not bear the thought of his species becoming extinct. The Corallians had created beautiful art and music. They had built cities that floated in harmony with nature. They had never hurt anyone. All of that would be lost forever. He adjusted the communicator settings and tried again. The device hummed softly as it searched for a connection. Zethka spoke into the microphone in his own language, then repeated his words in galactic standard so any species could understand. This is Desha Prime calling any ship or station. We are under attack by Vorthak forces. Our defenses have failed. We have maybe hours before complete annihilation. Please, anyone who receives this, we need immediate assistance. He paused, listening to the static. Nothing came back. The galaxy was full of civilized species, but they were all far away. Even if someone heard his message, what could they do? The Vorthak had over 200 ships in orbit around his world. No single fleet could challenge such numbers, but he had to try, for his children. For all the Corallian children who deserved a chance to grow up. We are a peaceful people, he continued. We have families. We have children who have never hurt anyone. Do not let us become extinct. Please, if there is anyone listening, anyone at all, help us. Far away, much farther than Zethka knew, his signal bounced off a damaged quantum relay. Instead of traveling toward the Centauri Federation, it shot out into deep space in a completely different direction. It traveled for hours through the darkness between stars, growing weaker with each passing moment. The signal finally reached a small monitoring station, orbiting a moon in a system the Corallians had never heard of. The system was called Sol, and the third planet from its star was covered in dangerous storms, violent earthquakes, and deadly radiation. Most galactic species would have considered it uninhabitable, but it was not uninhabitable. Something lived there, something that had learned to survive in conditions that would kill most aliens. Something that had spent millions of years fighting for every breath, every meal, every day of life. Lieutenant Jake Morrison was drinking coffee and reading reports when the alien signal came through his equipment. Coffee was a mild drug that humans used to stay alert. Most species would have been poisoned by it. Jake barely noticed the bitter taste as he listened to the translated message. At first, he thought it was some kind of mistake. First contact with aliens was supposed to happen slowly, with careful protocols and lots of planning. It was not supposed to be a desperate cry for help from a dying world, but the translation software was working perfectly. The message was real. Somewhere out in the galaxy, an entire species was about to be wiped out by something called the VOR. Jake set down his coffee cup and reached for the emergency communication button. Within seconds, he was connected to Luna Base Command. Within minutes, the message was racing toward Earth. Within an hour, it had reached the highest levels of human military command. The humans had been exploring space for 50 years, but they had never met another intelligent species. They had always wondered what first contact would be like. They had imagined peaceful meetings, cultural exchanges, and shared knowledge. They had not imagined this. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the message while she was reviewing fleet exercises aboard the Defiance. She was a tall woman with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen many battles. She had fought in the resource wars on Earth and the colonial rebellions on Mars. She thought she had seen every kind of conflict possible. She had been wrong. As she listened to the translated plea from Ambassador Zethka, Admiral Sullivan felt something she had not experienced in years. Pure, cold anger. Someone was committing genocide while she had the power to stop it. She called her senior officers to an emergency meeting. They would need to act quickly. Every minute they delayed meant more innocent deaths on a world they had never heard of. The humans did not know that they were about to change galactic history. They did not know that most species considered them impossibly violent and dangerous. They only knew that someone needed help, and they had the ships and weapons to provide it. In the bunker on Thesha Prime, Zethka continued broadcasting his desperate message. He did not know that help was coming. He did not know that his signal had reached a species that viewed genocide as a personal insult. He just knew that his people were dying, and he would keep calling for help until his last breath. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood at the center of the war room aboard the UHS Defiance. The massive ship hummed quietly around her as it traveled through space. Holographic displays showed star maps and ship positions. Her senior officers sat around the metal table, their faces serious in the blue light. Colonel Lisa Hayes was the first to speak. She was a Marine officer with short black hair and scars on her hands from years of fighting. Admiral, we have 37 ships in our fleet. The enemy has over 200. By any normal calculation, this is suicide. Commander Ryan Clark nodded. He was younger than the others but had led special operations on a dozen worlds. His dark eyes never seemed to rest in one place for long. The tactical situation is impossible. We would need at least 3 times our current force to have a reasonable chance. Dr. Amy Chain looked up from her datapad. She was the fleet's expert on alien life and had been studying the intercepted messages from the Corallian world. I have been analyzing their communications. The Corallians are herbivores. They eat only plants. They have not fought a war in over 1,000 years. Their ships are designed for exploration and trade, not combat. Admiral Sullivan studied the holographic display showing the Thesha system. Red dots marked Vorthak ships surrounding the blue dot that represented the dying Corallian world. The numbers were overwhelming. Any sane military commander would call for reinforcements and wait for better odds, but Admiral Sullivan had not become a fleet commander by being cautious. She had earned her rank fighting pirates in the asteroid belt and rebels on the outer colonies. She had learned that sometimes impossible odds just meant the enemy was not expecting you to try. Tell me about The Vorthak, she said to Dr. Chun. The scientist touched her datapad and a new image appeared above the table. It showed a tall insect-like creature with 4 arms and sharp claws. Its body was covered in thick armor plates that looked almost black. They are apex predators from a world with heavy gravity, Dr. Chun explained. They evolved to hunt in packs. Their society is built around conquest and domination. They have destroyed 17 civilizations in the past 10 years. Commander Clark leaned forward. What about their technology? Advanced but focused on overwhelming force. They use energy weapons and thick armor. Their ships are large and heavily armed. They fight by surrounding their enemies and blasting them until nothing is left. Colonel Hayes smiled coldly. Sounds like they have never fought anyone who shoots? Back effectively, Admiral Sullivan nodded. That was exactly what she was thinking. The Vorthak had spent years attacking peaceful species who did not know how to fight. They were bullies who had never met real resistance. What do we know about their tactics? She asked. Dr. Chun brought up another display. This one showed recordings from previous Vorthak attacks. They always use the same strategy, massive formations firing energy beams at long range. They try to destroy enemy ships before they can get close. It has worked against every species they have fought. Every peaceful species, Commander Clark corrected. These insects have never fought humans. Admiral Sullivan stood up and walked to the main display. She studied the enemy positions around Thesha Prime. The Vorthak had arranged their ships. In a perfect blockade, it was textbook galactic warfare. It was also exactly what she had expected from enemies who had never faced real opposition. They are fighting by the rules, she said quietly. Galactic rules for civilized warfare between advanced species. She turned to face her officers. We do not fight by those rules. Colonel Hayes grinned. No, we do not. Admiral Sullivan had grown up on Earth where survival meant adapting to constant danger. Earthquakes, storms, radiation, predators, disease. Humans had learned to fight not because they enjoyed it, but because their world gave them no choice. They had developed weapons and tactics that would terrify most civilized species. More importantly, they had developed something that peaceful aliens lacked: the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect others. Dr. Chun, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we are engaging in first contact under emergency conditions. We are going to help these people whether they approve or not. The scientist nodded and began typing on her console. Commander Clark, I want your stealth ships ready for deep penetration missions. The Vorthak will not be looking for ships that do not appear on their sensors. Understood, Admiral. Colonel Hayes, prepare your Marines for boarding actions. If we get close enough to enemy ships, I want them taken and held. The Marine officer's eyes lit up. It will be my pleasure, Admiral. Admiral Sullivan looked around. The table at her officers? They were all volunteers who had joined the expeditionary fleet to explore the galaxy and make contact with alien civilizations. None of them had expected their first alien contact to be a war, but they were humans. They came from a world that had tried to kill them every day of their evolution. They had survived ice ages, meteor impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and countless other disasters. They had fought wars against their own species that had killed millions and learned lessons that peaceful aliens could not imagine. Send a message to all ship commanders, Admiral Sullivan ordered. We jump to the Disha system in 1 hour. Battle stations. As her officers left to prepare their ships, Admiral Sullivan remained alone in the war room. She looked at the display, showing the Vorthak fleet, and thought about the desperate alien who had sent the distress call. She did not know what Corallians looked like or how their society worked. She only knew that they were about to be wiped out by bullies. That was enough. In the depths of space, the human fleet began to move. 37 ships against 200, impossible odds by any reasonable measure. But humans had never been particularly reasonable. They were the species that had looked at a world trying to kill them and decided to thrive instead of just survive. The Vorthak. Supreme Commander HFY sat in his command ship above Thesha Prime and watched his forces. systematically destroy the remaining Corallian defenses. It was going exactly as planned. In a few more hours, the last Corallian city would fall and another species would join the long list of his conquests. His sensors detected something at the edge of the system, unknown ships approaching at high speed. Only a few dozen of them. Probably scavengers hoping to pick through the wreckage after the battle was over. HFY dismissed them without a second thought. He had never heard of humans. He did not know that Earth existed. He had no idea that help was coming from a species that considered genocide a personal insult. He was about to learn why attacking innocent people in front of humans was a very bad idea. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Desha system like avenging angels. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UHS Defiance and looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of enemy ships. "Open a channel to the Vorthak fleet," she ordered. "Channel open, Admiral." Admiral Sullivan's voice was calm and cold as she spoke to the aliens who were destroying an innocent civilization. "This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Human Expeditionary Fleet, Vorthak forces. You will cease your attack on Thesha Prime immediately and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning." The response came quickly, laughter, harsh, chittering laughter from the Vorthak commander who thought he was dealing with another weak species. Admiral Sullivan smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Very well," she said. "You have made your choice." Supreme Commander HFY clicked his mandibles in amusement as he looked at the tactical display. The unknown aliens had actually threatened him. 37 small ships against his mighty fleet of 200 vessels. It was almost insulting. "Send 50 ships to deal with these fools," he ordered his lieutenant. "Make it quick. I want to finish burning this world before the cycle ends." The Vorthak ships moved forward in perfect formation. They were beautiful vessels in their own way, with curved hulls and elegant weapon arrays. Each ship was 3 times larger than the strange alien craft that waited at the edge of the system. Their energy shields glowed softly in the starlight. Captain Pete Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UHS Fury and watched the enemy ships approach. He was a short man with gray hair and calm hands that never shook, even in battle. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and rebels on Mars, but this was different. This was humanity's first real war against aliens. 50 ships coming our way, Captain," his tactical officer reported. "They are moving in standard galactic formation. Long-range energy weapons charging," Rodriguez nodded. The Vorthak were doing exactly what Dr. Chun had predicted. They fought like every other civilized species in the galaxy, maintained distance, use superior numbers, blast the enemy with energy beams until they surrender or died. It was a good strategy against other civilized species. But humans were not civilized by galactic standards. "All ships, this is Rodriguez. Attack pattern Delta, close range, maximum acceleration. Show these bugs how Deathworlders fight." The human ships suddenly accelerated toward the Vorthak fleet, at speeds that made the alien computers scream warnings. No known species could survive such forces. The gravity would crush their bodies and turn their brains to liquid. But humans had evolved under Earth's heavy gravity. Their bones were dense, their muscles strong, their organs built to handle pressure that would kill most aliens. What seemed impossible to the Vorthak was just another day for people from a death world. The Vorthak opened fire at maximum range, sending streams of blue energy toward the approaching human ships. It was the standard opening move of galactic warfare. Disable the enemy before they could get close enough to cause real damage. The energy beam struck human shields and did almost nothing. The human ships had been built by a species that understood that the universe was trying to kill them. Their armor was thick, their shields were strong, and their designs were focused on survival rather than beauty. "Captain," Rodriguez smiled as enemy fire splashed harmlessly off his hull. "Return fire, show them what kinetic weapons can do." The human ships opened fire with weapons that most galactic species had abandoned centuries ago. Instead of elegant energy beams, they used simple metal projectiles fired at incredible speeds. Railguns and mass drivers that turned solid matter into devastating weapons. The Vorthak had never seen anything like it. Their energy shields, designed to stop other energy weapons, were useless against solid metal moving at near light speed. The human projectiles punched through Vorthak hulls like paper and exploded inside. Enemy ships. 3 Vorthak vessels died in the first exchange. Their beautiful hulls cracked open and spilled atmosphere into space. The survivors tried to retreat, but the human ships were too fast and too aggressive. "Boarding pods away," Rodriguez ordered. Colonel Hayes had been waiting for this moment. Her Marines launched from the human ships in small armored pods that flew toward damaged Vorthak vessels. It was a tactic that had not been used in galactic warfare for over 1,000 years. Most civilized species considered it barbaric. The Marines did not care what civilized species thought. The boarding pods cut through Vorthak hulls with plasma torches and deposited squads of human soldiers inside enemy ships. The Vorthak had never fought boarding actions. They did not know how to defend the inside of their own vessels. Sergeant Mike Torres led his squad through the corridors of a Vorthak cruiser. The passages were wide and tall, built for 8-foot insect creatures. The lighting was dim by human standards, but Torres and his men could see perfectly. Humans had evolved to hunt in darkness. The first group of Vorthak defenders they encountered were not ready for close combat. They had energy rifles designed for long-range fighting in open space. In the narrow corridors of their own ship, they could barely use their weapons effectively. The Marines used shotguns and assault rifles, short-range weapons perfect for fighting inside ships. They moved through the Vorthak vessel like shadows, taking control of key systems and capturing important areas. The Vorthak were strong and had sharp claws, but they had never fought an enemy that was stronger. Humans from a high-gravity world were faster and more powerful than anything the insects had ever encountered. When a Vorthak warrior tried to attack Sergeant Torres with its claws, the human simply grabbed the alien and threw it against a wall hard enough to crack its armor. Within an hour, 12 Vorthak ships had been captured or destroyed. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. Supreme Commander HFY stared at his tactical display in shock. Half of his attack force was gone. The unknown aliens had not just defeated his ships, they had torn them apart with weapons and tactics he had never seen before. "What are those things?" his lieutenant whispered. "They fight like demons." "Send another 100 ships?" HFY ordered. "Double the previous force? These aliens cannot stand against such numbers." But even as he gave the order, doubt crept into his mind. His scouts were sending reports that made no sense. The alien warriors seemed to feel no fear. They threw themselves into battle with a ferocity that defied all understanding. They fought at close range where any sane species would maintain distance. They boarded enemy ships in actions that should have been suicide. On Thesha Prime, Ambassador Zethka watched the battle through his orbital scanners. His crystalline skin had changed from purple fear to blue-green hope as he saw the impossible happening. The unknown aliens were not just holding their own against the Vorthak. They were winning. "Who are they?" he whispered to himself. "What kind of species fights like this?" Admiral Sullivan received the battle reports aboard the UHS Defiance and nodded with satisfaction. The first engagement had gone exactly as planned. The Vorthak fought by galactic rules. Humans fought by Earth rules. There was no comparison. "Open a channel to the Vorthak fleet," she ordered. When the connection was established, her voice was calm and cold. "Supreme Commander, you now have our attention. That was your screening force being destroyed. Stand down immediately or face our main battle group." HFY's response was filled with rage and confusion. "What manner of demons are you? What? Deathworld spawned such monsters?" Admiral Sullivan's reply was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather. "We call it Earth, and you just made a very big mistake threatening people under our protection." She cut the connection and turned to her tactical officer. "Signal all ships. The Vorthak want to know what a Deathworld species can do. Let us show them." The human fleet began to spread into attack formations that made no sense to anyone who understood galactic warfare. Instead of maintaining safe distances, They split into small groups and prepared to attack from multiple directions at once. The Vorthak had conquered 17 civilizations using overwhelming force and standard tactics. They had never faced an enemy that ignored the rules of civilized warfare. They had never fought a species that had learned to survive on a world that tried to kill them every day. They were about to discover why threatening innocence in front of humans was the worst mistake they could possibly make. Supreme Commander HFY made the worst decision of his life. Instead of retreating with his remaining ships, he committed his entire fleet to destroying the humans. His pride would not let him admit that these unknown aliens had beaten him so easily. All ships, attack formation, he ordered. Destroy these demons. Show them the true power of the Vorthak Empire. 150 Vorthak vessels moved toward the human fleet in a massive wall of metal and weapons. Their energy cannons charged with deadly light. Their shields glowed bright blue in the darkness of space. It was the largest attack force the Vorthak had ever assembled. Admiral Sullivan watched the enemy fleet approach on her tactical display. The Vorthak were doing exactly what she had expected. They were using brute force instead of strategy. It was the mistake that civilized species always made when they panicked. All ships, spread formation. Attack pattern Omega, she commanded. Show them what happens when you threaten innocence in front of humans. The human fleet split apart like a school of fish avoiding a predator. But these fish had teeth. Sharp, deadly teeth that the Vorthak were about to discover. Commander Ryan Clark led his squadron of stealth ships into the heart of the enemy formation. The Vorthak sensors could not detect them because human stealth technology was too primitive for advanced alien computers to recognize. The enemy was looking for sophisticated energy shields and exotic particles. They never thought to look for simple heat dampening and electromagnetic silence. Clark's ships appeared inside the Vorthak defensive line like ghosts materializing from thin air. His weapons targeted the command ships first, the large vessels that controlled enemy communications and tactics. Fire, he said quietly. Kinetic rounds struck Vorthak command ships and tore through their hulls. The beautiful alien vessels, designed more for intimidation than real combat, cracked open like eggs. Emergency lights flashed as atmosphere escaped. Into space. Captain Sandra Lopez commanded the heavy cruiser UHS Retribution. She had studied Dr. Chun's reports about Vorthak psychology and found their weakness. The insect aliens were driven by the need to protect their egg-laying queens. It was their most basic instinct. Target the rear sections of enemy ships, she ordered her gunners. Those are where they keep their breeding chambers. The Retribution's massive railguns opened fire. Instead of aiming for weapons or engines, like most species would do, Lopez targeted the parts of Vorthak ships where their queens laid eggs. The psychological effect was devastating. Vorthak warriors abandoned their battle stations to protect their future offspring. Panic spread through the enemy fleet as ship after ship lost coordination. The Vorthak had never fought an enemy that understood their deepest fears. They were used to simple battles where both sides tried to destroy each other's weapons. They had no defense against humans who attacked their minds as well as their ships. Colonel Hayes launched the largest boarding action in human history. 300 Marines in assault pods flew toward enemy vessels like a swarm of angry wasps. The Vorthak tried to shoot down the pods, but human armor was too strong and the Marines too determined. Sergeant Torres found himself inside another Vorthak ship, this one larger than the first. The corridors were filled with smoke and emergency lighting. Vorthak defenders fired energy weapons at his squad, but the Marines had trained for this kind of fighting their entire lives. Grenades out, Torres shouted. The small explosives bounced down the corridor and detonated among the Vorthak defenders. The aliens had never developed weapons like grenades because civilized warfare was fought at long range. They had no tactics for dealing with explosives in enclosed spaces. Torres and his men advanced through the smoke, their rifles ready. The Vorthak were brave fighters, but they were not prepared for humans who could see in darkness, breathe in thin air, and keep fighting even when wounded. One Vorthak warrior, larger than the others, charged at Torres with its claws extended. The alien was 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor, but it had made a crucial mistake. It was trying to fight a human in hand-to-hand combat. Torres dropped his rifle and met the charge head-on. His bones were dense from Earth's heavy gravity. His muscles were strong from a lifetime of fighting against his world's attempts to kill him. When he grabbed the Vorthak warrior, the alien discovered that humans were physically stronger than anything it had ever encountered. The sound of breaking chitin echoed through the corridor as Torres threw the Vorthak against a bulkhead. The alien's armor cracked and it fell to the deck, unconscious. "Sector secured," Torres reported into his radio. Moving to engineering. All across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out. Human Marines fought through Vorthak ships with a skill and ferocity that terrified the aliens. They used weapons and tactics that no civilized species would consider. They showed mercy to enemies who surrendered, but no mercy to those who continued fighting. The Vorthak had built their empire by conquering peaceful species who did not know how to fight back. They had never encountered a species that was better at warfare than they were. They had certainly never fought anyone who treated combat as a natural part of life rather than something to be avoided. On Desha Prime, Ambassador Zethka coordinated with the human fleet through his communicator. Admiral Sullivan had assigned Dr. Chun to work with him, sharing information about Vorthak positions and tactics. "Your people fight like nothing we have ever seen," Zethka told the human scientist. His crystalline skin glowed with amazement and gratitude. "They show no fear. They rush toward danger instead of away from it. Are all humans like this?" Dr. Chen smiled sadly. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned that running away does not work. Sometimes you have to fight." "But you are fighting for us," Zethka said. "We are strangers to you. Why do you risk your lives for people you have never met?" "Because it is right," Dr. Chun replied simply. "Your people are innocent. The Vorthak are bullies. Where we come from, good people stop bullies." The tide of battle had completely turned. Vorthak ships tried to retreat, but human vessels were faster and more maneuverable. The aliens found themselves trapped in a battle they could not win against. An enemy they could not understand. Supreme Commander Thekvuar watched his fleet crumble around him. His beautiful ships, symbols of Vorthak power, were being destroyed by primitive kinetic weapons and savage boarding actions. His warriors, the finest soldiers in the Empire, were being beaten by aliens who fought like wild animals. In desperation, he made one final decision. If he could not defeat these demons in space, he would force them to watch his victory on the planet below. "All remaining ships, target the Corallian cities," he ordered. "Begin planetary bombardment. Let these humans choose between saving their ships and saving the innocents they claim to protect." It was his last mistake. Admiral Sullivan received the targeting reports and her face went cold with rage. The Vorthak commander thought he could force humans to choose between military victory and protecting civilians. He did not understand that, for humans, there was no choice at all. "All ships, new priority," she broadcast to her fleet. "Protect the civilians. Show these insects why you never threaten children in front of humans." The moment Supreme Commander Thekvuar gave the order to attack civilians, everything changed. The human fleet, which had been systematically destroying Vorthak ships, suddenly shifted tactics. Instead of pursuing fleeing enemies, every human vessel moved to protect Desha Prime. Captain Pete Rodriguez watched his tactical display as Vorthak bombardment ships lined up to fire on Corallian cities. His own ship, the UHS Fury, was badly damaged from the previous fighting. Smoke filled the corridors and half his weapons were offline. "Captain, we cannot reach the planet killer in time," his tactical officer reported. "It will fire on the city before we can intercept." Rodriguez looked at the display showing millions of innocent Corallians in the target zone. Children who had done nothing wrong. Families trying to hide in shelters that would not protect them from orbital weapons. "Set collision course," he ordered. "Quietly, sir. You heard me. Set collision course with that planet killer, maximum speed." The bridge crew stared at their captain. They all knew what he was asking. The Fury was too damaged to win a normal fight, but it still had engines. It could still ram the enemy ship and prevent it from firing on civilians. "Captain, that is a suicide run," his first officer said. Rodriguez smiled. It was a calm smile. Without fear. "No, that is Tuesday. We are humans. We do not let innocents die when we can stop it." The USS Fury accelerated toward the Vorthic planet killer at maximum speed. The enemy ship tried to turn its weapons on the approaching human vessel, but Rodriguez had timed his run perfectly. The Vorthak ship could either fire on the city or fire on him. It could not do both. The alien commander chose to defend his ship. Energy beams struck the Fury's hull, but the human vessel was already doomed. Rodriguez held course as his ship broke apart around him. "Tell my wife I kept my promise," he said into his communicator. "No civilians died on my watch." The Fury struck. The Vorthak planet killer amidships and both vessels exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. Captain Rodriguez and his crew died instantly, but their sacrifice saved 3 million. Corallian lives. It was not the only sacrifice that day. Captain Sandra Lopez saw another bombardment ship preparing to fire on a different city. Her ship, the Retribution, was too far away to intercept with weapons. Like Rodriguez, she made the choice that humans have made throughout their history when innocent lives were at stake. "All hands brace for impact," she announced. "We are going to ram that son of a bitch." The Retribution smashed into the Vorthic vessel and destroyed it completely. Lopez and her crew joined Rodriguez in death, but another Corallian city remained safe. Across the battlefield, human ships placed themselves between Vorthic bombardment vessels and the planet below. They absorbed devastating fire to protect aliens they had never met. They died to save people whose names they would never know. Admiral Sullivan watched her ships sacrifice themselves and felt pride mixed with grief. This was what made humans different from other species. They did not fight for conquest or glory. They fought because it was right. "All remaining ships converge on the Vorthak flagship," she ordered. "End this." The surviving human vessels surrounded Supreme Commander Thekvioar's command ship. The Vorthic leader found himself trapped with nowhere to run. His mighty fleet had been reduced to a handful of damaged ships. "Surrender," Admiral Sullivan's voice came over the communication channel. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your bombardment ships are gone. You have lost." Thekvoar's response was filled with hatred and confusion. "What are you? What kind of species throws away their lives for strangers?" "The kind you should never have messed with," Sullivan replied coldly. The final battle was brief. The remaining Vorthak ships tried to fight, but they were outnumbered and outgunned by the surviving human vessels. Thekvoar's flagship exploded under concentrated fire from human railguns. The Supreme Commander died, never understanding what he had encountered. He had spent his life conquering peaceful species and had never imagined that somewhere in the galaxy was a species that considered protecting others more important than their own lives. On Desha Prime, Ambassador Zethka emerged from his bunker for the first time in days. The sky above his world was clear of enemy ships. The bombardment had stopped. His people were safe. His crystalline skin glowed bright gold with joy and gratitude as he spoke into his communicator. "Human fleet, this is Ambassador Zethka. On behalf of all Corallians, thank you. You saved our species from extinction." Admiral Sullivan's response was tired but warm. "You are welcome, Ambassador. No one commits genocide while humans are around. To stop it." In the days that followed, human engineers worked alongside Corallian survivors to rebuild their cities. Dr. Chun established communication protocols and began the process of formal first contact. The peaceful aliens were amazed by human technology and grateful for human protection, but the real impact was felt across the galaxy. News of the battle spread quickly through interstellar communication networks. For the first time in galactic history, someone had completely destroyed a Vorthak fleet. The insect empire that had terrorized 17 civilizations had been beaten by a species no one had ever heard of. Other alien governments sent diplomatic messages to Earth. Some offered alliance. Others requested protection. A few issued challenges, thinking they could succeed where the Vorthik had failed. All of them wanted to know more about these new Deathworlders who had appeared from nowhere to change the balance of galactic power. Commander Clark established a permanent human base in the Dacia system. His job was to protect the Corellians and serve notice to other potential aggressors. The galaxy now knew that attacking innocent people would bring human attention, and human attention was something most species wanted to avoid. Colonel Hayes worked with surviving Corellian defense forces, teaching them basic combat tactics. The peaceful herbivores were eager students, though they would never match human aggression or skill. "Why do you help us learn to fight?" one young Corellian asked her. "Your ships can protect us." Hayes looked at the alien with kind but serious eyes. "Because we cannot be everywhere at once? Sometimes you have to be able to protect yourselves until help arrives." 6 months later, Ambassador Zethka visited the human base on Desha Prime. His skin glowed with healthy blue-green colors as he walked through the facility where human and Corellian personnel worked side by side. He found Admiral Sullivan in her office, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The human leader looked up as he entered. "Admiral, I have been thinking about the day you arrived," Zethka said. "We sent our distress call hoping for help from our allies. Instead, we received something we never expected." "What is that?" Sullivan asked. "Guardians," the alien replied. "You did not just save us. You have become the protectors of the innocent throughout the galaxy. That is a heavy burden." Admiral Sullivan stood and looked out the window at Corellian children playing in a rebuilt park. Human patrol ships moved silently overhead, keeping watch. "It is a burden we choose to carry," she said quietly. "Someone has to stand up to the bullies. Someone has to protect those who cannot protect themselves." She turned back to the Corellian ambassador. "Your distress call reached the wrong species. You were hoping for civilized help from civilized allies. Instead, you got humans." Zethka's skin brightened with gratitude. "No, Admiral, we got exactly what we needed. We got warriors who fight not for conquest but for others. The galaxy will never be the same." Outside, human ships patrolled the space around Desha Prime. Their crews came from a world that had tried to kill them every day of their evolution. They had learned that sometimes violence was necessary to protect peace. The galaxy had gained new guardians, and the universe was about to become a much safer place for innocent people everywhere.